Hello and welcome to Focus on Gaza. I'm Imran Garda. Every week we'll be bringing you the latest from Gaza in the aftermath of the recent war and providing a rare glimpse of real life inside the Gaza Strip. Coming up on this program, we speak to a top Hamas official about making peace and promising security. And in the first of our weekly reports on the families of Gaza, we catch up on the extraordinary story of the Samouni children. Plus, we speak to Save the Children about how the trauma of war affects the lives of children like them across Gaza. But first, it's now 2 months since Israel's war on Gaza began with a devastating airstrike targeting a police academy and killing 48 policemen. Lauren Taylor reports on the impact of that strike for the families affected and its continuing repercussions on the role of policing in Gaza.
Piles of rubble. That's all that's left of most of Gaza's police stations. Some were even bombed more than once during the 22 days of Israel's offensive.
Well, this was one of the first places to be hit, one of 6 simultaneous targets for the Israeli Air Force. The odd thing is there's actually not that much visible damage here, but 50 out of 53 police officers who were here on the day died in the sheer blast effect from those missiles that came from the Apache helicopters. You can see on the ground their boots as they were torn off them and bits of the old shells that exploded. The other thing that killed them in part was this shrapnel, tiny, tiny bits of it that go into the body and cause massive internal bleeding.
On the day of that attack, I was in the studio presenting as the first shocking images started to come in of the aftermath.
And we just returned to our breaking news coming out of Gaza, reports of Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. We're just getting some other pictures, and I want to warn our viewers that you might find some of these other pictures distressing. Raw footage coming in of what seems to be the site of one of the attacks and what appear to be dead bodies on the ground there, or people trying to be rescued, some in uniform, and operations there to get people out and to take them to hospital or to be treated, but quite grim scenes there on the ground.
Abu Hatem was incredibly lucky to survive. He told me how he'd been at the graduation ceremony for new recruits minutes before the first missiles hit.
48 people died on the spot. I reached the gate, then more rockets came in. I managed to take shelter behind this wall and watched from here.
Throughout the war, Israel repeatedly targeted what it called Hamas police stations. But many who worked as policemen were ordinary people who simply needed a job. One of those who died here was Munias Beta. His salary supported a large extended family, including his 2 daughters, his elderly father, and a disabled brother. His widow talked to me about their loss.
My first reaction was shock. I didn't expect to hear that my husband and father of my children was dead. I cried a lot. I'm still crying for him after 2 months. Hala is only 3. We haven't told her yet. She doesn't know what death means. She keeps asking when he'll be home from work. Haneen is 6. She knows her father is dead. She cried and cried.
She told me her husband used to work as a horse and cart driver and only took the police job to earn more money. With most of their buildings crushed beyond recognition, the police now operate out of temporary sites, but they are back on the street. Here with some enthusiastic, if somewhat chaotic, traffic direction. I met the police spokesman at their bombed-out headquarters. He told me they're having trouble recruiting as people realise they're at risk from further Israeli strikes. But he also insisted that the police was not just a Hamas organisation.
We actually have 3,000 people from Fatah as members. The chief of police who was killed in the war was also from Fatah. We also have members from the other Palestinian factions and ordinary people from the community. And we want all factions to be represented.
We went on patrol with one unit. Through their shattered windscreen, more ruins of Gaza City. They know they're at risk as Israel doesn't differentiate between what they do and those who fire rockets. The reality, though, for many here is any job is better than no job, especially as they can't go elsewhere as the borders are closed. They're prepared to work for any government, whatever its colour. They have families to feed. Lauren Taylor, Al Jazeera, Gaza.
And Lauren now joins us from a rainy Gaza City. Lauren, in this post-war environment and with goods in such short supply, what sort of crimes are being committed? What are the police really up against?
Well, the first thing the police are up against, Imran, is the lack of infrastructure. This is just one of their bombed-out police stations. The only clue, really, is the blue walls. That's the colour of the blue for the police here. All their vehicles, or an awful lot of them, have been destroyed. That one that you saw in my report had a broken windscreen, but it also had broken windows. So everything that they have is in pretty ropey condition. The central jail, for instance, has also been flattened, and all the detention centres. So where do you put any criminals if you do manage to arrest them? And all of this in the context, they say, of the potential threat of further Israeli airstrikes. One of the mornings when we were supposed to go and film with them, they told us it's simply too dangerous. Can't you hear the F-16 jets up above you? And indeed we could. Now, the main crime they were telling me that they have to deal with at the moment is drugs crime, but also factional violence. Imran.
Lauren, do ordinary Gazans you've spoken to believe they even have a functional police force or any security in general?
Well, it's interesting because it's functional in one sense in that they're visible, they're on the streets, they're out and about. So I suppose that's a deterrent in a way. I suppose if you're going to mug an old lady and there's an armed policeman down the road, then you might think twice about it. And to an extent, after the war, there was no looting, no unrest on the streets, which you could imagine might happen in a situation where the security infrastructure has been so visibly destroyed. But what some people argue is that people don't step out of line here because they're simply too afraid of what the repercussions might be. And they also tell us that in some cases they feel that the police is not doing enough to tackle the factional violence. But then it really does depend who you talk to. Some people say that they actually feel safer now. We had a chat with some people out and about on the streets of Gaza City.
With regards to internal security, there is a feeling of peace. And people, as you see, are out and about. And there seems to be stability.
There's no longer any internal security. Even at home you don't feel safe. For example, someone could come into my home and take my husband or one of my children and kill them in front of my eyes.
Every day things are getting worse because of the siege, the internal fighting, and political arrests. After destroying the security infrastructure, there's no kind of safety.
So, Lauren, clearly many in Gaza are still concerned about that security situation. Now, on the political level, there have been talks in Cairo and elsewhere to bring the factions together. Is that hope for unity a big part in bringing about security in the Strip?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for any potential new unified government that brings together, as you said, those rival Palestinian factions is going to be creating a security and police force that is loyal to a Palestinian state rather than loyal to any particular faction. Now, part of the problem is that's actually quite difficult to achieve. And one of the main committees that's been set up as part of those reconciliation talks in Cairo is to examine that. How do you have a police force that's loyal to the Palestinian state? And I think what's going to be even more difficult to achieve is not just getting it on paper representative of all the community, but actually ensuring that people on the ground can trust any new police force to be fair and actually to be genuinely representative. I think that's going to be almost the biggest challenge of bringing about any new security apparatus in a unified government. Imran?
And with all of this in mind, the siege continues. Of course, basic goods can't come into Gaza, which only exacerbates the problem for ordinary people.
Yes, that's right. I mean, certainly here on the ground, people do lack the basic necessities. There are still people living in tents, a month after the end of the war and trying to kind of cope as best they can. And as you can see, the weather at the moment is really quite bad. It's very cold at night. So people who are living in shelters are having a real struggle with their ordinary daily life. And I think that's going to be part of the ongoing problems that people are dealing with here. Without the border crossings being open, you've not just got the shortages of goods, but you've also got widespread unemployment. And unemployment clearly is a situation which breeds crime, and that's one of the problems they were talking to us from the police is, drug crime. If people are unemployed and they have nowhere to go, they can't even get out of here, then the drugs problem is not going to get any better.
Lauren Taylor, thanks ever so much for that. Well, after the break, we'll be asking Hamas's top man in Beirut if they can guarantee security for the people of Gaza and we'll be hearing from the children in one Gazan family about life in the shadow of war.